In compliance with Chapter 551, Open Meetings of the Texas Government Code, I call to order a public hearing meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District for Thursday, June 26, 2025 at 6:19 p.m. A quorum of the board is physically present at Austin ISD Central Office to conduct this meeting. This meeting is being broadcast on cable channel 22 through Spectrum of Sound Broadband and on channel 99 through AT&T Uverse. Closed captioning in English is available on these platforms for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Welcome again, and thank you for joining us again. Next is an opportunity for the public to share comments with the board. This time allows speakers to comment publicly about turnaround plans. Members of the public wishing to participate in the public hearing portion of our meeting called a dedicated Austin ISD phone line in advance of the meeting to sign up to speak in person or audio record their remarks. Tonight we have 2 people who signed up to speak in person, and we have 8 people who left a recorded message. We'll begin with in-person testimony. In order to provide as many opportunities for input as possible within a limited time period at this meeting, each speaker will be allotted 1 minute. No substitutions or yielding of time to others is permitted. Callers who signed up to speak in person are welcome to come to the microphone when their names are called. As you come to the microphone, please press the button to turn the microphone on. There's a device that will light up as you move through your 1 minute of allotted time, and when the buzzer sounds, please make a final thought in 1 sentence. Again, we ask whether you come to give a complaint or praise that you reference any staff member by position or abbreviated last name, and we ask that all audience members, whether speaking or not, please show respect for others at all times. Our in-person speakers for tonight are Steve Swanson and Laura Smith, and please come forward when, please come to the microphone.
I am here to speak for my students. This is a request. And coworkers, and for the students across the district, not just at my school. Speaking as a teacher at Webb Middle School, I see that a lot of staff has already had to leave. Sometimes they have to go to elementary schools or high schools, and they're in different, or even to different parts of Austin. One had just gotten they had just gotten a place close to Webb and then had to turn around and move to another place. Before the plans for the future had been even agreed upon, we had to change where we were going to go for next year. Now, we need to find staffing for our schools that have been ripped apart out of shame, and nobody would want that. Speaking as a parent of kids connected to Lamar Middle School, I am seeing that I'm seeing the emails updating the school that Dobie will no longer go to Lamar Middle School, but then suddenly I am hearing that after that, suddenly hear that Webb and Burnett will probably fail again this year as well, and suddenly Webb was then informed about this danger conveniently at that time during Teacher Appreciation Week. So, as a teacher that used to teach at a charter school, I want to know if this process is intended to take these students' scores away from AISD, because I care about my school, I care about my community, and I care about what's going to happen in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Swanson?
Getting help. Is it on? Is it on? Okay, yay. Good evening, I'm Steve Swanson, and I want to thank you for standing up for your rights and the rights of our students and the public by stopping the harmful TEA-driven turnaround planning process. This reveals to Texas and beyond the public and public education in Austin cares for its students. Yesterday, during the State Board of Education meeting, it was shared that TEA and its lawyers have failed in honoring the Texas Lawyers Creed and in their roles in Chapter 11 of the Texas Education Code to serve schools in public-based planning and action for school improvement. The board asked questions about the creed, which were discussed, and the board was encouraged to have TEA lawyers educate them regarding the creed, required in the creed. Lawyers who are here tonight and others who work with the ISD, please stand up and contact the TEA lawyers. Together, start educating the public regarding the creed and support AISD in standing up for the public-based planning and action for our schools, starting with stopping the turnaround planning process. I welcome your questions, and I'm here to help. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to our recorded message for public testimony, so please listen carefully.
This is Marie. I'm calling on turnaround plans. Campus intervention teams listed on school improvement webpage claim that principals were included as required by law. The principals were never included in planning or even in one conversation. There are no principals for these schools. We do not have sufficient staff for these schools, and TAPs are required to include the staff in their credentials. The community meetings were not sent out. Principals were prevented from sending out notices without approval from the district. The district didn't give approval or send out the notices. I emailed everybody in Austin ISD to try to get the notices sent out, but AISD was on holiday. Limited and very prescribed quote-unquote engagement followed with hand-selected invitees, but this was also not the required engagement. The turnaround plans are de minimis. I believe we tore apart these school communities, and it has been heartbreaking to watch. Please keep the Dobie leader as either the academic director in the school improvement office or associate principal to give the school a chance at success in rebuilding its programs that all the kids and staff called about and the district promised to protect but did not. Thank you.
Mi nombre es Jarency Sotomayor. Buenas tardes, mesa directiva y superintendente. Soy madre de familia y miembro activa de esta comunidad que es Webb, Dobie y Burnett. Estoy muy interesada, pero más preocupada por el futuro de nuestras escuelas, ya que son muy importantes para nosotros, porque son las escuelas donde nuestros hijos se estarán formando educativamente para que en un futuro puedan ellos ser unos profesionales y tengan mejores oportunidades y una vida digna. Quiero y pido, por favor, seamos incluidos en las decisiones que tomen para nuestras escuelas. Quiero que nuestra voz y nuestros derechos sean tomados en cuenta. Todo esto es por el bien de nuestros hijos y maestros y toda nuestra comunidad. Iniciemos de cero, ya que no hicieron las cosas bien desde un inicio. Iniciemos trabajando en equipo por un mejor Austin ISD. Se los pido, por favor, nos tomen en cuenta.
This is an interpretation into English of Arency Sotomayor's message. My name is Arency Sotomayor. Good afternoon, Board of Trustees and Superintendent. I am a parent and active member of this community of Webb, Dobie, and Burnett. I am very interested and even more so worried about the future of our schools, as they are very important to us because they are the schools where our children will be educated so that in the future they can be professionals and have better opportunities and a decent life. I would like and I ask that you please include us in the decisions you make for our schools. I want our voice and our rights to be considered. All of this is for the benefit of our children and teachers and our entire community. Let's start from scratch, since you didn't do things well from the beginning. Let's start working as a team for a better Austin ISD. I ask you to please take us into account.
Hola, mi nombre es Andrea Aguilar. Mi hijo va a la escuela Burnett Middle School. Estoy dando un mensaje a ustedes. ¿Quiénes son ustedes? ¿Qué conocimiento y experiencias aporta ustedes? Nosotros como padres de las 3 escuelas afectadas queremos ser incluidos en el trabajo de las escuelas nos nos pertenece esa comunidad y será bueno que pues nos incluya a nosotros también. Nosotros estamos listos para ayudar ah, y para prepararnos no solamente para nosotros, sino para nuestros hijos. Yo pienso que nuestros hijos son nuestro primer.
This is an interpretation from Spanish into English of a message from Andrea Aguilar. Hello, my name is Andrea Aguilar. My son goes to Burnett Middle School. I am sending this message to you, those who contribute your knowledge and experience. We, as parents of the 3 affected schools, want to be included in the school's work. We belong to this community, and it would be good if you included us as well. We are ready to help and to prepare ourselves, not only for ourselves, but for our children. I believe that our children are our priority.
Bueno, mi nombre es María Ríos y yo estoy representando a las escuelas de aquí del norte de Austin, West, Burnett y Dobie. Por favor, Matías, que no se te olvide lo que nos has prometido. Por favor, con mucho respeto te pido, por favor, que lo cumplas. Y así podremos cocinar muy bien la barbacoa.
This is an interpretation into English of Maria Rios' message. Hi, my name is Maria Rios, and I am representing the schools here in North Austin, Webb, Burnett, and Dobie. Please, Matthias, don't forget what you promised us. Please. Very respectfully, I ask you to please honor it, and that way we will be able to make a really nice barbecue.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Leonard. I was a math teacher at Webb Middle School. Yesterday, my good friend, Mr. S.S., and I went to the State Board of Education. We informed them about the Texas Lawyers Creed and a little bit more about what's going on with our district, the harm that the turnaround plan is causing. The more that we try to understand this situation, the more that we uncover that this is a systemic rights violation, starting with Texas lawyers who are their due diligence would be to follow the Texas Lawyers Creed, inform the public of their rights, and act with integrity, not to follow private agendas, etc. TEA should be training us all in school planning. That has not happened. TEA has not trained AISD and all relevant parties within Austin ISD in school. Should not be allowed to intervene in our district. And AISD board members should be aware of all of this, and they should be making sure that these things are being followed by the TEA before they agree to these plans. And thank you for listening. Please educate yourselves on the creed.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Berta Varela. Soy madre de familia y miembro de la comunidad de la escuela Webb. Estoy en representación de las escuelas Webb, Dobie y Burnett. Quiero pedirle al superintendente y cada uno de los miembros de la mesa directiva que sean transparentes, que nos tomen en cuenta en sus planes, en sus decisiones, que trabajemos juntos, ustedes como responsables del Distrito Independiente de Austin y nosotros como padres y miembros de la comunidad. No queremos que la TEA traiga sus escuelas charter o que intervengan en nuestras escuelas. Queremos una educación de calidad para nuestros hijos. Por favor, trabajemos juntos y hagamos un distrito independiente de Austin grande y fuerte. Gracias.
This is an interpretation into English of Berta Varela's message. Good afternoon. My name is Berta Varela. I am a parent and a member of the community of Webb Middle School. I am representing Webb, Dobie, and Burnett Middle Schools. I want to ask the superintendent and each of the board members to be transparent, to consider us in your plans, in your decisions, to work together with us, you as those responsible for the Austin Independent District, and us as parents and community members. We don't want TEA to bring its charter schools or to intervene in our schools. We want a quality education for our children. Please, let's work together to make a great and strong Austin Independent District. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Me dirijo a usted, superintendente Matías, y a la mesa directiva. Mi apoyo es para las escuelas, nuestras escuelas Webb, Dove y Burnett. Mi nombre es María Ochoa y soy madre de familia de la escuela Burnett, de una alumna de la escuela Burnett. Creo que se necesita trabajar más acorde con los padres y maestros que nos hagan partícipes de los cambios que hacen o que harán. Y una de mis preocupaciones es que tengan maestros para los niños con necesidades especiales. Uno de mis comentarios es si por favor en sus juntas, como la de ayer, de consolidación, me sentí un poquito ofendida en un momento por el léxico que usan y también por las gráficas. Hay personas o vemos personas que no entendemos claro todo, y sí me gustaría que fuera un poquito más explícito, porque no, a veces siento como si tratan de
This is an interpretation into English of Maria Ochoa's message. Hi, good afternoon. I am addressing you, Superintendent Matias, and the Board of Trustees. I support schools, our Webb, Dobie, and Burnett Middle Schools. My name is Maria Ochoa, and I am a parent at Burnett Middle School, of a Burnett Middle School student. I think you need to work more in line with parents and teachers to let us know about the changes you make or will make. And one of my concerns is whether you will have teachers for the children with special needs. One of my comments is that, please, in your meetings, like yesterday's consolidation meeting, I felt a little bit offended at some point because of the terminology you use, as well as the graphics. There are people, including me, who don't understand everything clearly, and I would like for it to be a bit more explicit, because sometimes I feel as if you're trying to.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Segura and board members. My name is Irma Castanon. I'm a parent and community member. I'm here to give my opinion on topic for the turnaround for Dobie, Burnett, and Webb. I want to encourage you to keep working closely with the parents, families, and the community of those three schools to ensure the success of all the students in these three schools. Open communication, transparency, collaboration is the key to rebuild the trust and keep parents, students, and teachers engaged to have a better academic outcome improvement. When families and educators work together, we create a stronger foundation for our student success. Let's unite in our goals by providing the resources and help to every student for those three schools so they can reach their full potential. Don't forget, we're not failures, and if something happens, this is on you. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our public testimony. Thank you to everyone who came to speak tonight and who called in. Trustees, are there any questions or clarifications? Trustee Quintana.
I was just hoping really quickly if somebody could remind us when the community engagement dates are, because I know we still have some around turnaround plans, right?
We're about to get into that. I can pull them up.
Okay, just because I know I'm hearing, over and over that, people want to be included, so I want to make sure that we have the dates and times so that they know where to be for engagement. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments before our presentation? All right, thank you all. Next up then is, as a reminder, please feel free to share general comments or questions on non-voting items with the board by email at trustees@austinisd.org. And next is our presentation on turnaround plans for Burnett Middle School, Dobie Middle School, and Webb Middle School, the 2025-2026 turnaround plans. And Mr. Segura, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, President Boswell. Members of the board, I'd like to invite Dr. Jacob Reach, Chief Officer of Government Relations and Board Service, to join me and to share the presentation and to answer any questions from the board regarding our turnaround plans.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Segura. Happy to share our turnaround plans with you tonight for our three campuses, Burnett, Dobie, and Webb. So just as a reminder, our reason for identification and the purpose behind a turnaround plan is for a campus that has been identified as unacceptable using the state accountability system for 2 consecutive years to prepare and submit to TEA a campus turnaround plan. These campuses, Burnett, Webb, and Dobie, received that first unacceptable rating in 2019. That's also when they created a TIP. And then they received their second unacceptable rating in 2023. The reason we have the gap there is due to COVID in multiple years of either not having STAR or there being a pause on the actual accountability ratings for that year. I will briefly mention that Dobie had a slightly different road to get here, but now they're on the same timeline. Dobie was also identified under federal accountability, which is why we started a conversation on Dobie back in February. However, in March, when the 2023 state accountability was finally released from the federal or from the state injunction, the state made clear that for campuses like Dobie that were on this other timeline, that they could be moved to the same state timeline so that we were not managing two different timelines. We took that as a great opportunity to do some more work with our Dobie community, so we did move them over. So right now, our requirement is to submit these turnaround plans to TEA by June 30th, 2025. So the Texas Education Agency provides districts available strategies that they can utilize when developing a turnaround plan. There are basically 6 strategies. There's different ways to implement these strategies, but the main focus and requirements are written here. Austin ISD has selected the Restart District Managed, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So we are utilizing the District Managed Restart because this is really aligned with the feedback that we heard from our community when we started this work with Dobie and then building out again with Burnett and Webb. It is aligned with the request that we keep these campuses open, that we believe in these campuses and support them and operate them as a district campus. Knowing that as a preference, we believe that the District Managed Restart was really the best strategy available for us to support these 3 campuses. Furthermore, our strategy includes implementing Accelerated Campus Excellence, or ACE. Briefly, the ACE has 5 required pillars. That's strategic staffing, instructional excellence, extended day, social and emotional supports for students and staff, and community partnerships. One of the things that we thought worked really well with ACE is that allowed us to build on some of the great work already happening in these campuses around campus partnerships, social emotional learning, keep those there, and really also expand them. And so we thought that this was really helpful for that environment and the great partnerships and community support already happening with those schools. We have also decided to include a contingency plan as part of our turnaround plan. That's not a requirement, and it's most likely not something that TEA is going to use to determine whether they approve this turnaround plan or not. But we wanted to make sure that we were being transparent with our community and transparent with TEA of what our intentions and plans were for the year. So we have created a proactive contingency plan to check on student performance throughout the year and look how we are progressing towards our 2026 goals. We could determine in December to activate an 1882 partnership model, which would provide an accountability pause to any of the campuses for which we do that. So no matter what happens for accountability in 2025, that pause would be in place and no accountability action would happen. We want to continue to run, while we're supporting these campuses, also run alongside that with an 1882 RFP. They call it a call for quality schools is the term that TEA uses. And so we'll have that and continue to share information about that with the community and with our board while we get ready to potentially make a decision in December. So I wanted to briefly share about the development timeline. I mentioned earlier that Dobie was on a slightly different timeline because of the federal accountability, but Burnett and Webb had the exact same timeline. So we notified the public for Burnett and Webb on May 1st, and Dobie was previously notified already on February. We started the development of the TAP for those groups May 2nd, going through May 22nd. And Dobie's was just extended from the work we were already doing all the way out to May 22nd. We also had stakeholder participation. This included meetings that we held at the campus. We also made the plans available on campus and on our website and provided methods for feedback on the plans through the website or through the campus. We had our public notice of this plan on the 23rd, and then, of course, the public hearing, which is occurring now for the 26th. The board will be asked to approve these plans in the regular voting meeting right after this public hearing. And based off of the vote of the board, we would then submit those plans to TEA tomorrow. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's required in the plan and what's our overall goal for these plans. So at minimum, the Texas Education Code requires that a TAP include a description, and this is their wording, the method for restructuring, reforming, or reconstituting the campus. They also ask for a description of the academic program, for a summary and inclusion of the written comments, a summary of verbal comments and the submission of the written comments that were collected during stakeholder engagement, a detailed description of the budget, a description of staffing and any other financial resources that we may use to implement this plan, and supplemental resources that will be provided by the school district or other identifiable sources. If the district has authorized an in-district charter, the term of that charter would also need to be included under TEA rules, but that is not something that we're looking at this moment. Under the law, under the Texas Education Code, a district who actually implements an ACE program is only required to list how they will meet the requirements of ACE, and then the commissioner is actually required to approve that plan if he determines that all those requirements are there. We have gone above and beyond that. We still wanted to include the other information that was required, and we went and built out further timeline of engagement, including what we'll talk about in a moment, a CAC plus. And we also talked further about our goals and some of the work that we'll continue to do from now and through the year. So briefly, before I move on, I want to talk about the 3 goals that we have set up for these campuses, because that is something that TEA will look at as well. Of course, the number 1, which is set by TEA, is accountability rating. And that's that we expect the campuses to achieve a rating of C or better under the accountability system in the upcoming school years. We've also set a goal around STAR scores for our students who are currently receiving special education services. And that's that we expect those students meeting or mastering grade level standards on STAR to increase by 10%. This is also aligned, of course, with our GREED order, as is our next goal, our MTSS. And that's ensuring that every student qualifying for Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions will have the clear, well-documented plan, including progress monitoring. So that's something that we'll be checking regularly for these 3 campuses and sharing, not just with TEA, but also our TEA monitors, because these are so closely related to our agreed order with TEA. So this next slide is the Effective Schools Framework levers. And this is a framework that TEA has developed that they ask all targeted improvement plans, and actually any plan that you may utilize for TEA, including TIPS and CIPs, that you align the work you're doing to these 5 levers. So we want to make sure that we share this, and if you go and look at our turnaround plans, you can see how we outline that we're aligned with each of these levers. So there was a question about our timeline. We do want to share that there are additional opportunities to be engaged. In a moment, we'll talk more about the CAC plus. But what you can see here is the work that we've done starting in May, going through June, the board voting today, submitting to TEA tomorrow. Again, the deadline for TEA is actually June 30th. TEA has, they actually are required to provide us a response by July 18th, either approving the plan or sharing with the district why they did not approve the plan and what improvements are needed to the plan in order to meet approval. If that were to occur, we would then have 60 days to resubmit that plan. We also mentioned on here releasing that RFP that I talked about for an 1882 partnership that'll run side by side with the work that we're doing. We will make clear in that plan that this is a contingency for us. It's not that we are going to do this for sure, so apply. It's we would like you to apply and work with our community, and if needed, we may utilize that. But that work will start then. We will also find out in August the final, or The TEA will release accountability ratings. They're not final until later in the year, but that is when they will release them. We will, of course, have our own internal projections prior to that. So coming up in the fall is when we'll start some of the testing that we'll do with the students. We'll do the map testing that we do for all of our campuses, no different than those other campuses. What we'll do that's a little different is the fall STAR interims and that we will conduct during October that will help us better understand what steps we need to take. And then moving into December, we will look at our released STAR test, the interim STAR test, and that map testing that we've already done. That will have a slightly different timeline on the middle of the year because we want to look at this data a little bit early. And we will try and make a decision, well, we will make a decision by December 12th on what those next steps will be, whether it will be to move forward with the plan or to look at our contingency plan. And then, of course, in April, we'll have STAR testing for those campuses and our end-of-year map, and then get the accountability for that year in August of 2026. And then if that accountability led us to potentially TEA taking an action, they would take that action later in November. So I mentioned a little bit about the key performance indicators that we wanted to look at, but I wanted to build on that a little bit more. We've been working with a technical partner, which actually really positions us well for not only approval with TEA, but also for the opportunity of receiving additional funding from TEA, both through a LASSO grant and potentially through what TEA calls a resource school designation, which provides them 10% more on their ADA for meeting certain requirements associated with an ACE campus for a campus that has not met accountability. So we're excited about that. Working with our partner, we will continue to do our campus observations, including our PLCs and our teacher support. We'll also be looking at our whole child and parent engagement work. So some of the indicators that we'll focus on is attendance discipline, and then how we're engaging parents and parent participation. We'll also have formative assessment data on the campus level. That includes the common assessments that we typically do with most of our campuses that I just went over, the STAR released, and also exit tickets through the classroom to gather more data. And then we'll utilize a student data tracker that will help us look at data throughout the entire year and provide for frequent monitoring. So one thing I want to call out that's in our plans and is a requirement is that we are providing additional staffing to all of these campuses. It is 9 FTEs per campus, but the actual positions are a little different, which is why we have them spelled out here. This is really based off of need of the campus from what we've heard from the campus leadership, the campus community, and where we saw we need additional support on the data that we already have. So as you can see at Burnett, we'll be adding teachers, a wellness counselor. Every campus will get instructional coaches. They'll actually get 4 content interventionists. Burnett is, of course, a little bit bigger than Dobie and Webb. Dobie and Webb will both get an additional assistant principal. Burnett already had an additional assistant principal, which is why we're not adding one there. But for these other 2 campuses, we'll be adding the assistant principal. They'll also get a counselor, and then they'll get 2 content interventionists instead of 4 at each of those campuses. So here's kind of a breakdown of what that looks like for our resources. This is just an example campus, but adding the additional staff, for instance, an assistant principal, the teachers, the counselors, the wellness coordinators, but then also the professional stipends that we'll be adding, funding for our teachers and our staff for supplemental time and overtime, and then family support and resources and other discretionary funding for use by that campus. And that is, you can see the actual budget for each one of these in the individual plans. Another thing I want to talk about, because we have received some questions around it, is where we're at on overall staffing for these campuses. So what I've provided for you here is the % of staff hired. This was of last Thursday. And so it may have slightly changed because we posted this on Monday. But based off of that data, you can see the % of administrators that we've currently hired, counselors, teachers, and then we also included the % of teachers returning, and then the % of overall staff returning. So that could include office staff, other support staff, TAs, And then the percent of teachers would just be those who are identified as teachers. The other thing that we want to talk about is our increased improvement engagement through this CAC Plus and other work that we're going to be doing. Superintendent Segura discussed this a little bit 2 weeks ago, but we want to expand the Campus Advisory Committee membership and embed a lot of our school improvement agenda topics into their work and into the calendar during the year. We will, of course, do our CIP needs assessment and work with our partners on that to understand how they can help support us on those needs assessment. So that's how that'll be a little bit different. We also want to ensure that school improvement topics are part of our principal coffees, our PTA meetings, our parent conferences, and the other engagement opportunities that we do throughout the year. And then we'll also have specific engagement opportunities for parents around the turnaround plans throughout the year as well. So we want to put a plug in there for any community members who may be interested in joining a Campus Advisory Council Plus. You can go to austinisd.org/advisory bodies, or you can also just go to austinisd.org and in the search bar type in CAC, and it'll take you right to the correct page. Yeah, I'm sorry, it'll take you to the first item on that list will be the correct page to click on. On there, you can submit your interest in joining one of these CAC Pluses. And I want to be clear that this is also open to more than just parents. It's also community members, business members who may be in the area, students, staff. So we hope that we get a wide range of interest in these committees. In September, we'll actually do our CAC training with these 3 schools. Really, again, with that focus on how we support that campus and how we're going to do kind of a larger buildup with the CAC. And then we also want to do a convening with the Austin Ed Fund so that those CACs can share out with Austin Ed Fund and external partners some of the supports and needs that they have. And so that Austin Ed Fund can see how they can start matching with some of those supports and needs to build out for the campus. So that is an overview of our plan, and we'll open up for any questions.
Thank you for this presentation, trustees. And we'll start with Trustee Foster and then go to Trustee Hunter.
So thanks for the plan, and pretty much supportive of the work you've done and where we're going. And there is a reality of what we can call structuring structures. When there is an external body that sort of sets the constraints, sets the universe of possibility, we then work within that. So whether we're looking at ACE or whether we're looking at the Effective Schools framework, these are intensely inward focused on the school, which is immensely important. So what's the staffing model? What's the curriculum? What are we doing? What are these work on these 5 levers that are all internally focused? With ACE, there's one that's externally focused, and that's the campus and the partnerships one, right? So I'm gonna ask you 3 questions that try to sort of explode this a little bit and push us outward. Because I don't think everything can happen just within the school if we're going to be effective. The school, any individual school is part of an ecosystem. So one is about vertical elements. So in other words, a little bit about what's going on at the elementary schools feeding into the middle. One is going to be about the horizontal elements. Is there any impact of magnet schools and magnet applications and how we're distributing our kids that has an impact on the neighborhood schools, in this case, Burnett, Dobie, Webb. I want to ask you also about our imagining of partnerships. And then finally, I do have one internally facing question, which is about the 1882 contingency. And I'm trying to go as fast as I can while still being coherent. So with regards to the 1882 contingency, one of the biggest question marks for me, and I think you have an answer, and I am really I'm ready to hear it. If we're saying our kids have to have made so much progress, and if they haven't made so much progress, well, then we're going to consider a toggle to an 1882. Do we have a plan, or what is the plan to build effective assessment tools to look at where our kids are in reading and math so early in the year, since we have to make this decision relatively early? So that's my sort of first question, is about the assessments to determine where our kids are at an early point.
Yeah. So two parts to that is first with MAP. MAP does give us some indication on how it expects students will do on STAR overall. It has that crosswalk. And so we can look at MAP performance and make some estimation on that. Our CDA, our CDA team, which is our assessment team, believes that that's about 80% accurate, which is pretty good.
Okay.
And they've done studies by looking backwards and saying, okay, here's what we estimated last year, and here's what it ended up at. How did we do on that? So they feel that that's pretty strong. We also have the release STAR test, which is not the same STAR test that they will take because it uses questions that are already released and will not be reused, but it asks similar types of questions. So not only is it a test that is much more aligned to what they will actually take later, but we know that it's because we heard questions of, oh, well, the test questions have changed. And the STAR released will mimic that. It will also follow certain TEKs that they do need to know. It may not be the exact ones, but again, it'll give us some idea based off of how they do on that, that'll help us determine, okay, based off of what we know from MAP, what we know from this release STAR, how do we think these students are going to do? And what do we think that's going to translate to their, at the end of the day, we'll sit there and say, well, what will their domain 1 look like? What will their domain 2A and 2B look like? And knowing that information, what do we think is a likely accountability rating for this campus? And by all means, I wish I could tell you that we'll have a place that will tell us 100%, but I just don't think that that type of system exists. Mm-hmm. But we will have something that's going to give us a pretty good idea on how students are doing. And it will certainly tell us how they're doing compared to the previous year. We'll certainly be able to look at that. And so when we take all that data and then talk to staff at the campus, talk to the principal at the campus and the teachers, and hear from them on that other part of what they're seeing in their classroom and what they're seeing from their own kids one-on-one, taking all of that together, we hope that we'll be able to make a recommendation to say, okay, we're comfortable going forward with this campus, continuing through the year, because we know that they're going to get a C, or the D's just to backstop, right? Mm-hmm. And so we believe that the test in place and the system in place and working with teachers who know those kids best, we'll be able to make a good recommendation to the board.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add is we can't overemphasize the importance of our technical partner. A partner who has navigated these types of challenges in other school districts. And so, I expect, and one of the things that they provide is really the kind of the roadmap that allows you to understand if these things, if you see this type of growth in these students at this point, then there's a probability of success or a performance. And so it's not necessarily only us saying that. It's my expectation and it's the commitment that the technical partners also independently kind of making that determination. And the one thing that wasn't necessarily detailed out in the presentation, but it's in there, is that the December timeline is the first timeline and the one that introduces it to TEA, a new partner, if we were to go down that path. There are later timelines, but as you kind of referenced, maybe alluded to, or even said directly, that as you go down a path, things get tighter and tighter and tighter. And so there are other windows of opportunity to pivot into an 8-2 partnership, but what we know is that there'll be fewer opportunities to fund it with opportunities from grants from TEA, and the opportunity to introduce a new partner who may not otherwise be known to the agency is not a possibility, right? But you think about, what information would you know in January or February? Well, you know a lot more, right? You can really know, and your last day is actually March 30th. And so if you have that information all the way down for the spring semester and can incorporate that into your decision making, then the probability of getting it accurate or getting it right increases. And so the challenge is if you wait till that moment, the only 18-2 partnership that is likely to be successfully approved is one that's not one that we would have probably selected through a different process. If that helps.
And we would lose out on grant opportunities.
Yep. Right.
So applying in December means that we have 2 different grant opportunities available to us. If we miss that deadline, though, we lose out on those 2 grant opportunities.
All right. And there's a lot in the weeds here, and I wish I could keep asking more questions to draw more of this really important information out. But basically what we know is that we want to know as early as possible how we're doing. And the longer it draws out, the more things become constrained. And so really good assessments are really important. So thank you for that sort of reassurance. To the three questions about the external, on the vertical elements piece, there's been several different folks, as we've talked about before, who have talked about the circumstances in the elementary school feeding into the middle school and how that sets up the middle school for success. So is there any additional consideration about the feeder angle to this puzzle?
Yeah, I can certainly start. So the first thing I'll say is, even in the development of this plan, we reached out and asked for engagement, and actually had principals and other community members from the feeder schools participate, as well as the rising sixth graders for summer school. We had conversations, and they were invited in as well. One of the things that we've done structurally is we've changed. Initially, last year, we had elementary school leadership and secondary school leadership. With how we're structured now, we actually have an improvement division. And what it allows us to do is to really think about the schools that need support, and what you'll know when you think about kind of where we are as a system. They are in certain areas of town, and they're aligned with certain schools. So the feeder pattern very much is critically important. But now all of that is under the direction of one leader. So what I've observed is, when you go to middle schools and you go to high schools and elementary schools, sometimes they're functioning in isolation and not always aligned in understanding kind of the connection to middle and high, and that there are decisions being done in elementary that impact middle and middle to high, certainly, but we don't, as a system, really dive in. Each school sometimes kind of on its own kind of builds out its plans, and there's certainly support. So we heard that in our conversations with the Webb community, the Burnett community, and the Adobe community for sure. And so for us, it's part of the work. We're talking about even going down to third, fourth, and fifth grade, seeing what we can do there to provide English immersion, summer opportunities, just to provide additional support so that when our students get to sixth grade, they're ready to be successful. And we just have to push deeper into the schools. And there's an acknowledgement of it, there's an expectation of it, and that's part of the work that we're going to tackle. And I think one of the things that's also in the slide that says CAC pluses, which is, it's not CACs, it's CAC plus, a lot more involved, a lot more people in it. There are many schools there, so we're not talking about just the three. It's the other elementary schools and middle schools that are also need this type of support. And so our goal is to kind of create a community of support, make sure that we're listening, we're creating alignment, and everybody understands that it is the 13 to really 22-year experience that you can have in Austin ISD that we have to support.
So I like that, and so sort of reaching deep. And wouldn't it be really cool? You went like this. Wouldn't it be really cool if there was like a this, which was like a high school, and these middle schools, and these elementary, so that the alignment became easier to affect, just like these districts with their football team, where they're like passing on the high school plays to the middle school football coach, and they're passing on to the Pop Warner community, and all of a sudden they have this great football team because they have a vertically integrated system that we don't have.
Yeah,
we don't have of our
correct. We don't have it. We don't have it, and I would say that that's something that we talked about in the long range planning effort that we did with community a couple of years ago, and certainly within the bond we talked about it a lot, like having our middle schools go play at the high school fields, creating community. It's not lost on me that you go to some middle schools, maybe you go to Goritsky and you're wearing a Bowie shirt, or you go to Murchison and you're wearing a Trojan shirt. Our middle school experience in other parts of Boston aren't like that. They're split multiple ways. I mean, there are some schools that split to 4 high schools. That is not creating community. But that also means taking on difficult things, including boundary changes. So it's all very much connected.
So this goes to the very depth of the conversation about an ecosystem. Right, if we're really going to be serious about a middle school doing well, which is right in between the elementary and the high, then we have to think about the whole thing and having coherence all the way deep in. So I hope that continues to be part of the conversation, and so powerful a part of the conversation that we find it impossible to not proceed without changing this aspect of our dysfunction, if that made sense.
It does. That is very heavy, intentional work.
Yeah.
And so I'm here for it. I think we're all here for it.
And you're invited, Superintendent, to put it right back on us. And some of us are asking for it, and we know that it will be challenging for many of our community members. You know that it will be disruptive in certain ways, but it's a productive disruption, and we as trustees will have to own that and be ready to have conversations that this is something that needs to happen. The middle schools won't get right in these regards if we don't attend to all of these different things. So that goes to the next piece, which is about the partnerships. And I love the idea of CAC plus, and see an opportunity for invitation that the plus is the apartment complex right across the street. The plus is the neighborhood mart right across the street, where that owner is going to tell you all the implications of how things are going in the middle school, for like how he has to manage his shop at 3:15 or whatever, right? So, or at 11, whenever. So I hope that when we think about partnerships, we have an ever expansive notion of that, so that these folks who really are going to get something out of it. If I'm the 7-Eleven across the street, I'm really going to get something out of the middle school working really well. But I'll also have insights into what's going on, right? So same with apartment complexes, right? One of the things that these models don't really seem to attend to, as far as my observation is that when the ownership of some apartment complex changes, everything can change overnight. Because they've either put up all these gates, or they've said, you know what, after school would be great for our tenants, so we're going to have this program in this building or whatever, or not. And again, it works to the landlord, to the apartment complex owners' benefit too, to be in that conversation. So I hope for a more expansive notion of partnerships than is sort of narrowly required in the TEA guidelines.
Yeah, Trustee Foster. So I definitely want to give credit to Trustee Gonzalez for like kind of seeding kind of what this could be, recognizing that, this is a citywide effort, but the lived experiences of our communities in these schools, like around these schools, they're going to know best. And so we don't have a structure right now that allows us to kind of lean in. And so, we felt strongly that taking the CAC structure, building upon it, not necessarily limiting it to what the CAC is, but building upon it, was something that we could take on. Going from the ground up was going to be pretty hard, just given the kind of challenges. So I very much appreciated kind of working through that. I'm actually really excited about it. I think it could actually be a really strong model. Right now, it's just for the schools that are having accountability challenges. But I could see this model being successful if used kind of throughout the district, but that's where we're starting.
And and this is one place where I'll give the state credit, that it mandates the existence of a committee that could be really powerfully leveraged. So I'm glad to hear that you'll lean in that way. My final question is around the horizontal. I don't think there's too much that can be done like tonight and in the context of this plan that we have to approve, but the renewed and ever vigilant recognition that there is a ethical dilemma that we wrestle with when it comes to where kids, quote unquote, get to go to school. And when we create an application process for you to go somewhere else, that does not just have an impact on that other place, that has an impact on the home community. And on one hand, I deeply believe that parents and families should have the opportunity to pursue options. And at the same time, you have to recognize that when something gets shiny over there, and you systematically have your most well-prepared kids sort of opting out, that has a local impact. That is the very impact of quote-unquote residential desegregation, When the black middle class leaves the formerly segregated community, that segregated community is now predominantly, it was already predominantly black, now it's predominantly black and low income because all the middle income folk left, right? And you see a long-term impact on that. I don't necessarily have an answer as to which way we should go, but at some point we need to acknowledge that part of the challenge that our neighborhood middle schools face is the bleed of the best positioned kids and families to other places. So I guess one question is, do magnets have an impact on Burnett, Webb, and Dobie in terms of the constituency being served? Who's being served in those buildings?
They do have an impact, especially when you also consider Ann Richards in that group, although it's not exactly a magnet.
Okay, yeah.
But I would mention, so I was reminded that Trustee Whitley Chu had actually taken some data that I even gave it to her, but she put it together in another way that showed where these students were going individually for these campuses. And one unique thing that we did by design is that actually the number one place that kids go from Dobie is Sadler Means and Gus Garcia, which we purposely designed it that way. That's not surprising. But we do see other students going out, and I think that each of these campuses have almost a third, if not more, of their kids going to another campus.
Each of these three campuses have a third of their students going out to another campus.
At least a third or more.
So that cannot be anything but statistically impactful in terms of our outcomes. So maybe not for tonight, but we better wrestle with this and quick.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, with the upcoming work we're doing around consolidations, we are looking at transfers, policies, we are looking at boundaries. It is all part of the larger work, so this is one of those things that will find its place into the work, and it's something that needs to be addressed.
And as always, I appreciate the opportunity for candid and transparent conversation, and you all are delivering on that. And I just have the expectation that we follow up not just with words, but with actions. Thank you all so much for the work.
All right, Trustee Hunter.
Thank you. And Dr. Foster, I resemble that remark. I don't get a sticker from the superintendent because I'm not a graduate of Austin ISD schools. I am a graduate of another local district because my parents did have the wherewithal and we did live the community, and we were part of that bleed, right? We contributed to the issue that we have now. So I appreciate that.
Welcome back.
Yes. East Austin proud, 2-3, right? Yep, that's my sister over there. I do want to set some context for the next one so that we can make sure. This is in reference to our board constraint number 2. The superintendent shall not allow families to be without meaningful partnerships with their home campus and district. This includes efforts to engage caregivers in ways that are aligned with the dual capacity building framework through accessible communications, collaborative campus meetings, which we've already talked about. And as part of this, the district provides families access to student testing results and supports them through the parent portal, which is my ask of the superintendent. So in what ways, Mr. Superintendent, can we ensure that families are meaningfully engaged and have an understanding? We always do MAP testing. Most schools, a bunch of our schools, always do interim testing. Sometimes those reports come home or they die in the bottom of the backpack, and parents don't really understand. There's a conversation that you and I had recently where I explained that when the parents see a 50, they assume their kid did 50% of the work. No, your kid actually got a 9, but we know a kid can't recover from a 9. So using dual capacity, how do we bring those parents in to be our true partners? As I am sitting in, no, I'm not. Is this Trustee Zapata's seat? No, there. I'm feeling her spirit tonight where she has always said, we cannot do this by ourselves. And I'm so excited that everybody is attuned now. So let's, how can we seize this moment to ensure that parents, STAR just came out. I don't know how many people understand that. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
Did you access your child's EOC scores?
No.
Okay. And that's gonna be the answer for a lot of our parents. And if it's an answer for a board member, then probably it's a whole lot of parents that don't know what just happened to their kid at the end of the year. I did, but I never tell her, so she never knows what she did. But how do we help our parents know where their kid, like, when people ask me, it's like, all you gotta do is ask, can my kid read? And if the answer is no, then what are you doing and what should I be doing? And right now, our parents are very attuned, and I just wanna know, how can the board help you seize this moment?
Yeah, I think it's holding us accountable. I've had you probably heard through some of the callers that I've had some pretty in-depth conversations, and what we've talked about a lot of the time is, and I've shared that they have to be engaged as well. The families and AISD, we're partners in supporting the student, 1,000%. And we need to understand from our parents what they need. And what I would say is what you're talking about is absolutely what needs to happen, an awareness of where your student is, and we have to recognize that in some cases, it may be, in some communities, it may be necessary to have a phone bank, right? Call in families. And with the schools, especially the 16 that have been identified in this document here, that's on page 13, when there's a milestone that gets reached, the administration having the intentionality of saying, okay, we're going to call all these families and we're going to attempt to communicate with them and let them know outside of the teacher and outside of the principal, do they understand where their student is? We know that some schools kind of take that extra step and they'll print the report cards, or we'll help them and get the report cards to them. We need to take more ownership of that as a district, and with these, be like, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to track it as far as KPIs go. But in all those ways, it is something that we've heard about, and I think it's also important, like Trustee Zapata, we kind of challenge her as well. We need to be honest about what we need from our families. And I over the last couple months, I've been telling families, we need your student to show up at summer school. What do you need from us to help you get your student there? And sometimes we need to be uncomfortable being direct, I think is part of the problem also on our side. So we're working through it all. I'm confident we're going to get there. As far as what we need from the board, ideas, I think, we've had conversations, even how we built the CSC Plus, Trustee Gonzalez, and then holding me accountable. We're not going to get it right the first time, but we're definitely going to try. And I think with a focus on these schools, we're going to be able to do some things in a different way. And I'm actually, kind of excited about doing it differently.
And I just want to reiterate that so that our words are not misconstrued. We're not blaming anybody. If we blame anybody, it would be ourselves. Yeah. But what we are saying is that there is room for our parents to show up in a different way, right? They're already showing up, but we need them to show up in a different way when it comes to academics.
Yeah.
I think that we can do good work together if everybody is all hands in. So I appreciate that. And as far as I realize any request I make, is always $1 attached to it. So if there's a phone bank, you got to pay somebody to answer the phone. If you mail report cards, paper and ink is not, toner is not cheap. So I do understand that's why I asked from the governance perspective, if there's a budget, before we dive in and sign off on it, then let's make sure that we've already thought about those things, or if it's even part of I know sometimes with grant money that we would be asking for, it can be set aside for that. But if we know that we're going to need to do phone banks or have a pot of spaghetti and say, come up here and get your kid's report card and we can talk about it with you, then as far as the budget is concerned, let's do that now so we know what we're getting into, so that it is not something where we're boy, can you give us $5 so we can buy some spaghetti so we can, no, let's do it now.
Yeah, so Trustee Hunter, when we were talking about the budget just a couple moments ago, I talked about the $10 million add in the budget in around April, May, right? And that was required for us to support the improvement work needed. And so when you look at slide 11 and you see the investments, whether it's stipends or additional staffing allocations, each of them have 9, as Dr. Reach mentioned, but there are different 9 because there's different needs on each campus. So when people ask, how are these plans different? That's one way. But even in there, you see family support resources. There's $150,000 set aside for one campus, right? So working with our partners, identifying what do those need to be for that specific campus. We've already identified the dollars; they're already in the budget. And so I think that right now we've done a good job of identifying the needs for this coming fiscal year for 25-26, and you kind of see it here and you saw it in the previous presentation. But if anything else comes up, we'll certainly let our trustees know. But I think the big opportunity is going to come when we partner with folks that want to see AISD be successful in this endeavor, right? That's where we're really leaning into the greater city, the Ed Fund. That's where we're going to need our partners like our trustees.
That's where I'm going next.
Need our trust.
Doctor, you see me? Yes, Dr. Reach. Now, if I'm an average citizen of Austin and I'm like, hey, I really wish I could support schools, but I'm not volunteering. So what should I do, Dr. Reach? How can I help?
Well, there's a couple different ways you could help.
Please.
I always believe that one of the best things people can do is join their PTA or their CAC to get involved with their campus. But you mentioned that maybe they don't want to volunteer, and that may also include meeting time. Our Austin Ed Fund does take donations. You can also dedicate your funding towards certain projects or programs or even to a campus. And so Austin Ed Fund will take that, and that's available online. But even if those don't work out for you, I still think that just getting engaged with your neighbors and talking to your neighbors about the school and saying, you know what, maybe your kid did go there, maybe they're going to go there later, but saying, I'm hearing this about the school. Do you know this about the school? And sharing the good news that you're hearing about them and what's going on, really, I believe is also very helpful.
It is, Dr. Reach, but when you close a sale, you go back to the thing that you want people to do. So the Austin Ed Fund is where you can contribute. The URL? Yes, you're looking it up? Okay, so I wish you could flash up on the screen right now.
I probably could pull it up.
Remember the telethons when you were a kid? Like, I feel like we should do one of those, but let's not. But Austin Ed Fund is where you can contribute. You can assign it to any project or into a campus. And if you are out in our community, please, please, please. Also, pretty soon, we'll be naming libraries. Just JK, I'm sorry. Thank you.
But Trustee Hunter, President Boswell and I have engaged with Michelle and individuals who believe in public education and believe in Austin ISD by way of the Ed Fund. We had a meeting, a week and a half ago? I think a week and a half ago. Because it's really important that the entire community, all of Austin, every taxpayer, every student, every staff person understands how critically important it is to get to implement the restarts, be successful, support our schools. And even if these schools are 10 miles away from you, what we do here, will impact AISD as a whole. And I can't say that enough. And so it may feel far away for a lot of our families, but if we're not successful, the entire district is going to feel that impact. And so we're really trying to communicate that out. And also, before I leave this moment, the Ed Fund, we have been working with them to identify different sub-funds. So because there may be someone who says, I don't know what to spend money on, but I want to give the Ed Fund dollars to support these 16 schools. We did it during the winter weather event. We did it during COVID. We're setting up those sub-funds already. So it should be very, very simple and very clear to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Dr. Rich.
It is austinedfund.org.
It's up there.
Lovely.
Thank you for that. Anyone else with questions? Trustee De Urioste.
Just a quick one on the SPED 10%. Is that also for STAR alts, or that's only the SPED kids taking regular STAR?
You're talking about the SPED goal?
Yeah, I think it was slide 6, is that 10% increase in test scores.
I know that it's the SPED subgroup. I would need to double check. I think that it is just STAR, but let me gather that information, and I'll make sure that if I don't get it while we're still here, we'll send it out in a response. But it would be the SPED subgroup that is on the TAPER report is what we'll use to measure. I think it's just STAR, but I'll verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I have just a couple. One, going back to the goals, the 3 stated goals that Trustee Urioste was referring to, I just want to understand our commitment and our risk. Not that I'm expecting us not to meet those, but is the only one we have to meet to break the accountability chain the C? Or are we obligated to meet all 3 of those goals for this turnaround to be considered successful by TEA?
That's a great question. So the legal requirement is to break the accountability chain, which is just a C. I do think that progress through the year, TEA will want to see how we're doing on these others and will want us to report out on it. Yeah. And, you know, where we may be looking for additional support or guidance from TEA, you know, that may be something that they reference in those discussions.
Okay, thank you. And I know that our board and our community and our administration all want to see that progress too. So thank you. I think it's not a question about not wanting to make it, just understanding really where our obligation and our risk is. So thank you for that. And I hope we do way better than all of that.
We can do hard things.
We can do hard things. We can absolutely do hard things. Yes.
And Trustee Urioste, it is STAR and STAR Alt. Yeah.
Thank you.
The team watching away. Gave me the
Thank you. And I have a question about what we know some of these schools share in common beyond the fact that they need turnaround plans, that we have not been giving the students, you know, the full support they need, and those campuses the full support they need. I know they all share a very high level of mobility, that students begin and end the year in different schools at each of those campuses, up to, you know, 20 or 30%, depending on the campus. I know that there are large numbers of newcomers to the country who are emergent bilingual students and have been in the country 3 years or less. At each of those, I think that number is around 20%-ish, depending. And I know there are a large number of students who are testing in 5th grade in Spanish at dual language programs or other programs. And then all students are required to test in English in 6th grade. And we know best practices in elementary school to have kids test. Our students test in the language they will be most successful in, but we also know when you change from one language to another, that impacts growth. And kind of knowing all of those factors are playing in, that mobility impacts. I think studies show that impacts the performance of kids who move and kids who remain, because there's that disruption. You know, all these questions. How does this plan, what are we seeing in this plan that will really support success for all of those students with all of those factors?
One thing that I would mention that we will ensure through this plan is that with the curriculum that's being utilized, that will be standard for all of these campuses, which should help with mobility, because if a student leaves one school and goes to another, they should come in with the same curriculum. It's somewhat the same spot that they left. In the past, we know that sometimes students leave one school and maybe they go to another school and they said, oh, what you were just learning, we're doing that, you know, we're doing that next 6 weeks. We're doing this other one right now. And so we do believe that that helps with mobility overall. And so that is one of the strategies that we want to look at. With using student data trackers and using the student dashboards, making sure that that information is available for everyone is also very important. ECST did show success for us when we first implemented it, and I remember this, and campuses could say like, oh, now I know what was happening with that student over at this campus, because I can go look it up. I can see the supports they were getting. They didn't need to call a teacher to find out. You know, they could go look at it on a system. We're hoping that this will be even stronger than that. We mentioned our goal of ensuring there's Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, and that those are also well documented. And that's for purpose as well, so that when students move, we know what supports there are. We don't need to go back through, figure out, okay, well, where is this kid? What is the support that he needs? It's in the system. It's there. So having those stronger systems, which I will say maybe laser focused on these 3, but really is for the greater system as a whole, is going to have some support. It's going to have a positive effect. And I really think that it's going to work well. I think that with the, the STAR testing, that's difficult. That's something that the state has set currently. Same with how long a student can test before they count when they're newcomers. And we certainly want to continue to provide good advice and work through our partner groups such as TASB and CASA and talk about good accountability rules that could help support that. But while we're currently under those rules, we need to ensure that, as you said, whatever is best for that student is what we're utilizing, but understand what that means for future years. And since, the LPAC will make that decision for that student on 5th grade. And I know that they'll make the decision that's going to be best for that kid. But you're exactly right on what it means for 6th grade, especially with growth, because you're switching a test. They may have actually mastered it, but it's the English that's making it difficult, not what they're actually being tested on. They know it, but having to respond on a computer in English is now made it, not the best solution. So that's just something that we need to do as a district and that we need to work with others, is to also ensure that we have good policy out there on how we can address some of these needs. I truly believe that the state is very willing to find good policy that's going to show student outcomes, but is aligned with what we're actually experiencing. They're willing to consider that and implement that. So we need to be vocal on how that can be done. Superintendent Segura, what am I missing?
Well, I was going to, one thing that we heard, because I know we're always trying to find opportunities to incorporate feedback from our community in these plans. So ELDA at Webb really supports, families that are coming into our community and those students. And so we're actually working to expand that in the other 2 schools, in Dobie and Burnett. We're working with the multilingual education team. We've got a structure in place. We have ability to launch it. So that's just another, resource that we're expanding from one that we heard loud and clear was valuable. It's not going to go away. In fact, we're going to expand it to the other 2 schools. Again, that's like direct feedback from the community that we heard. And I think it's going to bode well and help support those students that are new to our community or do have high mobility rates.
Thank you for that. And I want to just really share appreciation and then a question, again, based on our role with resources about that family engagement, that community engagement. That deeper engagement takes time, and I know we're asking a lot of our campus leaders instructionally in a lot of different ways, and just have 2 questions about the CAC Plus groups with an emphasis on the plus, and also that deep family engagement, really that's understanding our families as experts and really hearing what people have been coming to our meetings again and again, saying, we're ready, we are here, put us to work, and we want to partner with you. Do we feel that $150,000 per campus is enough to kind of give the campus leaders the support they need to manage that, to make it meaningful, to make room for that? And then the second is how will people be notified of the opportunity beyond just talking about it in a board meeting that most people aren't watching?
Yeah.
And that's in a language that honestly a lot of our parents don't speak. So
yeah. So the first thing is we're going to be pushing this out, across multiple avenues. It's not just the board meeting. So we'll be working with Allie in the communications department. It's one of the things that's difficult as you close the school year in the middle of summer. Families, rightly so, take a break. We all should take breaks. So it aligns well with our overall process as CACs get built up for the next year. But yes, we'll be promoting it. We'll be pushing it out and multiple languages and working directly with these campuses and those principals, as well as the other 13. To make sure that those communities are getting it, and if we need to, even with our ACPTA and neighborhood associations, having them help us push it out as well. Some I think will form fairly quickly, some might take a little bit longer, and there'll be people who want to engage that maybe don't kind of get to us till a little bit later, and we can make adjustments and add them. So I feel really good about developing it. It's a good structure.
Thank you for that. And then I'm going to take the moment to just speak one more time about the Ed Fund and talk about the power of what our community has done in partnership with the district through that tool in the past. During COVID, we had a call. Federal funding provided meals for students who weren't at school, but we knew that our students lived in homes where other people were experiencing hunger as well, and that just providing meals for our students wasn't fully supporting. We know that students bring a lot to our schools with them, and hunger is sometimes too often one of those things. And I think, during the pandemic, in partnership with our county, our city, and our donors, we provided more than 2 million, and with local restaurants who were keeping their people employed by doing this. Our community together in partnership and collaboration, in real love and understanding, provided more than 2 million meals. 2 million meals. And we are in a similar moment right now where this is an existential issue, not just for our district, but for our whole community. And I am so grateful for the people who are speaking up, who are seeing the need, who understand we need to get this right for every student, and who realize they have a part to play, as Trustee Hunter and Dr. Reach said, in many different ways. And by partnering with our partners, by being donors, by showing up to volunteer through these new committees in so many different ways. And in ways that our campuses and our campus teams will know will look different at each campus. So I really have deep faith in the power of our community, and as you said, to do hard things together. And this is immensely important, not just for these 3 schools, not just for the whole group of 16 schools, but for our whole community, and really appreciate what I'm hearing from our community about pulling together.
And Trustee Boswell, as we close, I just want to, we can absolutely do this. Our partner believes this, our families believe this, our student. We can 1,000% do this. We have a plan, we can implement. And I also want to kind of reiterate, we got to this plan, restart district managed at these campuses with feedback we got from the community. This is not the easiest path to break the accountability chain. Let's be clear, that's not what this is. This is the plan that leans into our communities, are the values that we have as a community, and we feel strongly that this can be very successful. So I just wanted to make sure that that was said before we closed.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I did have a question from a couple of colleagues about our time as a legally required hearing. This is also neutral time, similar to the hearing about our budget. It is one of to adopt a turnaround plan, a Texas district must have a hearing. And again, similar to our earlier hearing, we will take a vote during our regular voting meeting on this issue. So any further questions? All right, at this time, we will adjourn our public hearing, take a short break, and then return to open the regular voting meeting. And Secretary Gonzalez, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned at 7:42 p.m.